Okay, part two. Looking at our different kinds of inheritance patterns, we've got complete dominance where one trait will override the other. We've got incomplete dominance. This is going to be blending. And then codominance. This is where both show equally without blending. So if we look at our example right here, we've got this organism and this organism. They are going to cross, and the cross will produce the heterozygote offspring. And so in our first example, we see that we've got the blue crossed with the yellow, which gives us blue. So that is going to be complete dominance, where the blue overrides the yellow trait. In our second example, when blue and yellow cross, we get both blue and yellow. So this is going to be codominance. And then in our third one, we have blue and yellow making green. So that is incomplete dominance. You can think of that as incomplete dominance, because if you take two colors of ink and blend them together, you will get a mix. So a little trick to help remember that. All right. Other types of inheritance patterns. We've got multiple alleles. So remember, with blood type, you're going to have two genes controlling blood type. So you've got two spaces, but those two spaces could be filled with two A's, an A and a B, two B's, an A and an O, a B and an O, or two O's. So you have multiple possibilities, even though you still only have two spots. So this would give you type A blood. So this would be your phenotype. This would be your genotype. A and B are codominant. So your phenotype here is AB. This would give you type B blood. Both A and B are dominant over O. This would give you type A blood. This would give you type B blood. And this would give you type O, because that is the recessive out of all of them. And so remember that if you have type A blood, you can get this, or you can get the universal donor. You are type B, then you can get this, or O. If you are AB, you can get anything because that's the universal acceptor. If you are O, you can only get O. In addition to our ABO immunoglobulins, that's why we have these eyes right here. We also have the RH factor, standing for the rhesus factor, because it was discovered in rhesus monkeys. And you can either have the dominant RH factor, which gives you positive blood, or you can have the recessive, which gives you negative. So if you are RR or R little r, you would have a positive type blood. If you are little r, then you would have negative. So someone who is A, B, big R, little r would be the phenotype AB positive. Someone who is O negative as a phenotype, their genotype would be O, little r. So because you are talking about 4 alleles, that would be a dihybrid cross that includes regular dominance for the RH factor, but then also codominance for AB and regular dominance for A and B over O. The next type of inheritance pattern is epistasis. So while this is actually a dihybrid cross, so we see that we've got the genes here, big B for black fur, little b for brown fur. We also have the gene for color expression. And so if you have the big C, then we look to see if it is big B, or big B, little b for black fur, or little b for brown fur. So we see right here, we've got two big C's. So yes, color is expressed. Little b, it's brown. But in the case where we have little c, that means no color is expressed. And it doesn't matter what these are, big B, little b, or little b, it's going to be an albino mouse. So even though this is a dihybrid cross and two sets of genes, it's really controlling only one phenotype, which is fur coloration. But you have the overriding, so epi for above, controlling that trait. We also have sex-linked inheritance. So this is where we have traits that are carried on the X chromosome. Mainly, there are some traits carried on the Y chromosome, but mainly our sex-linked inheritance, we're going to be looking at X-linked traits. So if we have an X-linked trait and the mother has it, the mother can pass this to a daughter, or she can pass it to a son. If it's a trait where the father has it, he can only pass that to daughters, because if he passes the Y chromosome, it's going to be a son. So X-linked traits, males can pass it only to daughters. X-linked traits, females can pass it to their daughters and their sons. If it is an X-linked dominant trait, you're typically going to have even distribution between the sexes of the offspring. So you can have, because a female only needs one to show the trait, same as a male. So remembering that when we talk about a male and sex-linked traits, the XY condition is known as the hemizygous condition, which is the half trait because they only have one X. So then, so if we have X big B, X big B, that female would be homozygous dominant. X big B, X little b, she would be heterozygous. X little b, she would be homozygous recessive. So, but the male could be X big B or X little b. He can't be homozygous or heterozygous because he only has one X. So we say that that is hemizygous. So no matter what, whether it is a dominant trait or a recessive trait, whatever the male gets, he is going to show. But with a female, if it's a dominant trait, she would show it with these two examples. But if it's a recessive trait, she would only show it in the homozygous recessive condition. So this is why with dominant traits, you will see equal expression between males and females because the females only need one trait. But with X-linked recessive traits, come back to that. With X-linked recessives, then you will see a higher probability in males because males only need one trait to show it. You can't have Y-linked traits. That's only going to go from fathers to sons, and that will never be passed to a daughter. So if we look at these three pedigree charts to decide which one is X-linked dominant, recessive, or Y-linked, remember that circles are representing females, squares are representing males because boys are blockheads. And if it's shaded, it has the trait. If it's not shaded, it doesn't have the trait. That doesn't mean shaded is dominant. It could be a recessive trait and shaded in. So if we're looking at these, the easiest one to figure out is the Y-linked trait because only males would have it. And so that's going to be this one right here. Male, pass it to males the whole way down. And when we look at these two, trying to figure out which one is dominant or recessive, remember our basic rules for determining recessive traits. We're looking at right here. We have two parents that don't have it. We've got a kid that does. So that would mean that we're using the key as X big N for the normal trait, X little n for like color blindness or something like that. Then this male would be X big N Y, and then this female would be X big N X little n. And so she is passing that little n down to her son right here. She doesn't have it because she has a big N to cancel it. And so this daughter is going to have X big N from her dad, and then she'll have X something because we don't know what she's gotten from her mom. It could be X big N, she'd still be normal, or X little n, she'd still be normal. So that means that this one is our X-linked dominant trait. And so if you look at this, you can't really distinguish it from a regular dominance pattern. There are some things that you could look for, like right here. This is a sign that it's likely X-linked dominant because the mother doesn't have it, the boys don't have it, and then the father has it, and both of the daughters have it as well. So that's a sign that it's X-linked dominant. Speaking of DNA and inheritance from parents, extranuclear genes, this is the DNA that is found in our chloroplast and our mitochondria. So evidence of the endosymbiotic theory, but it's also important for inheritance because all of our mitochondria come from your mother. So remember that the egg cell has all of that cytoplasm, all of those organelles, all of the mitochondria. When the sperm fertilizes the egg, the sperm only contributes the nuclear material. And so all the mitochondria that you have received, you got from your mom. And so you can trace maternal DNA through mitochondrial lineages. If we look at a pedigree chart of that, we see that you've got the mother showing it here, and the mother is passing it to all of the kids. We see that here. We see that this one passes it to all of her kids. And we see that this one passes it to all of her kids. So that could be mitochondrial. And we see over here, again, mother passing it to all of her kids. But when we look at this right here, this mother has it, but she did not pass it to her daughter. So this right here shows that it's not mDNA or mitochondrial DNA, and this one would be mitochondrial inheritance over here. All right, these are some basic types of genetic disorders that you should be familiar with. It is unlikely that you would have to recall any of these. You used to have to know them. They would be often in multiple choice, but they may be talked about in different situations, different multiple choice or free response questions. So it's helpful to know their basic information, so you don't have to try to learn it as you're going. Some of these you should be familiar with. So trisomy 21, 3 of the 21st chromosomes. That is from non-disjunction. So remember, that's when the sister chromatids fail to separate in meiosis. So one of the gametes has 2 21st chromosomes. And then when it gets fertilized, then you get 3 from the other gamete. Color blindness, X-linked recessive. Hemophilia, blood clotting disorder, also X-linked recessive. So again, higher percentages in males. Cystic fibrosis is autosomal recessive, so it is on one of the body chromosomes. And what is interesting about this is this causes a malformed chlorine transport protein in the cell membrane. So when your body is producing mucus, especially when you have a sinus infection, the cells pump chlorine into the mucus, making the mucus salty. And then our rule, water follows salt. So then the water follows that mucus, making it thinner. And that's normally what happens in the lungs to trap dirt and dust and bacteria to help move it out. The thick extra mucus that gets produced in a sinus infection, that is an immune response trying to kill the bacteria. And the yellow-green color that is so beautiful in that mucus, that's all of your white blood cells fighting those bacteria. So if you have a sinus infection and you are paying attention to the color of your snot, which you should, as it changes from like that greenish yellow color and starts to get lighter and lighter and lighter, that means that you are winning the war against your infection. But back to cystic fibrosis, the genetic disorder, the faulty chlorine pump does not move the chlorine into the mucus. So it does not become hydrated with the water, and therefore the mucus is extra thick. So it's hard for people with cystic fibrosis to move the mucus out of their lungs. So all that stuff that should be trapped and moved out stays in the lungs. So they're prone to a lot more infections in their lungs. And that can lead to health problems and limit their lifespan. It also affects their digestive system because we pump mucus into our digestive system to help move things through. So that can impede their nutrient absorption because their mucus in their intestines is too thick. Tay-Sachs is also an autosomal recessive. This is a deficiency where the body can't break down certain fatty substances that they build up in the brain, and they cause mental impairment. This is actually a higher likelihood in the ethnic group, the Ashkenazi Jews, which I mispronounced. And so because they tend to only marry within their ethnic group, that is a form of genetic bottleneck. And so you see a higher percentage of the Tay-Sachs in that group. And then you have sickle cell anemia, malformed hemoglobin, autosomal recessive, that is a point mutation. If you do not know anything about sickle cell anemia at this point in the year, go learn it. All right, last thing that we have is that not all phenotypes are actually directly from the genotype. So we have environmental factors. So your hydrangeas based on soil pH will determine the color. You don't need to know which causes which. Just know that you can have an environmental factor affecting the gene expression. And then also the sex of a lot of reptiles is controlled by the incubation temperature. So cooler temperatures, more males for turtles, warmer temperatures, more for lizards, and then alligators are the Goldilocks of males. That makes no sense for temperature wise. Also for people, we do have some phenotypic expressions that change with environment. So when you are exposed to UV light, your skin gets darker as a protective measure against DNA damage. And also when you are in your growth spurts during puberty, if you do not eat enough, your body cannot grow to its genetic potential. So that can affect those traits. All right, that's it. Thank you.